What's up, guys? Chief here with another video where we learn how to play Starcraft 2. That's right, we're back. We're back for another video. We've spent 5 days, this many, count them, 5 days since our last video. Holy crap. It's a far cry from our one video a day that we set out with our goal to do. We've been falling short, and I really, I'm just going to relate with you guys right now. This is something that a lot of you guys might be struggling with also. It's kind of a big deal here in our country. It's something that a lot of people have to deal with, and it's causing to eat up a lot of my time, and it's just really frustrating. But I'm gonna do my best and try to pronounce it. I hope I don't offend anybody with the wrong pronunciation. I'll give it a shot. It's job, I believe is how you say it, and that's what I've been dealing with. So if you guys can just maybe relate to that and cut me a little slack, that would be great. Been working a lot lately, and those dumb annoying adult things like bills and responsibilities. I'm just gonna adjust my mic here, bear with me. Oh, that's looking sexual. There we go. Responsibilities, stuff like that. So I'm doing my best, guys, and today we're just gonna do a little bit of a video where we talk about more concepts, and this concept is gonna be the idea of army value. Pretty simple, right? So when you think about something like army value, it's pretty self-explanatory. Army value is just the amount of supply on the field that you have devoted towards army stuff. Pretty simple, right? Army value, it's the value of your army. Pretty easy. Now, how is that something that you can use as a concept within StarCraft 2? So let's look at, see if I remember my buttons. There we go. Beautiful. This little graph, if you look down, over here. There we go. Now, we're going to talk about the idea. Now, this is actually a very nice looking army graph, right? As far as four people on the same graph, we're all pretty even. Now, this is generally, if you're looking at your games, which I highly recommend doing after the game ends, take a look at your performance tab, take a look at your things like your graphs, your different graphs here, your resource collection rate, stuff like that. That's important to understand. But today we're going to talk just a little bit about the army graph and why it's important to kind of understand this concept. So what I mean by a concept is the idea that if you are, we're going to use the example of Terran because I think that's the easiest to understand. You want a gentle upslope like this. Like pretty much all of these graphs are following this nice gentle upward slope, right? That's what we want in general for our production. And what that means, back to the face cam, is that you're constantly producing out of your structures. Great. One of the biggest mistakes that I used to make personally, and I know that a lot of people are probably making, is when you build things like, say, we'll continue with Terran, we're making a barracks. You want to be producing units out of that barracks as much as you possibly can the entire game. Otherwise, it's wasted, right? You don't want to, say, build a barracks and not use it, right? Most situations. Again, if we're talking about maybe a situation where you're going Terran mech, you probably aren't going to need much bio, right? But you still need to get to the mech transition and be able to survive until you can start making those Thors, making those siege tanks. So you need to make some bio until then, right? We don't want, again, back to the little whoosh graphic here, we don't want flat spots. And you see this a lot with Protoss simply because they do a warp in, flat, 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 flat. Warp in, flat, 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 flat. They're waiting for their warp in cooldowns. That's a good example of what Protoss would look like, kind of that stair-stepper army graph kind of thing. And that's fine for Protoss. But as Terran, generally, we want to see a nice little upslope, Terran and Zerg. Zerg's going to be a little spiky also. But as a theme, we want to have a nice gentle upslope, and all that means is that we're producing constantly. If you build a barracks, you need to produce out of it. If you build a factory, unless you're doing a very heavy specific build, you probably want to be building something out of that factory at all times. Most of the time, just like you want to be making workers out of your different command centers, orbitals, your nexus, your hatcheries. You want to be making workers until you saturate your bases. With Protoss and Terran, you want to make sure you're constantly queuing workers constantly, because that's how you win this game, right? If we think about it, if we look at just resources, that's what StarCraft is about, right? You need to gather more resources than your opponent and use those resources better than your opponent to win the game. That's basically the core idea. Nice little ball of awesome summarizing what you're trying to do with all these creative different builds and strategies. So let's talk just a moment about a timing attack. What is a timing attack at its core fundamental base? What is it? A timing attack is when you try to exploit a specific window within the game where you're going to be stronger than your opponent. Pretty simple, right? Pretty general. And what that does for you is gives you a nice, strong timing to attack. Cool, easy, right? So if we go back to the army graph and think about that for a second, now I don't have a good example of how this could be demonstrated, but if we think about somebody who's doing a nice little, upward slope, just constant, doing their normal production, they're producing SCVs, they're making some units, they're focusing on getting some upgrades, so it's a nice general upslope. But if you're doing a timing attack, yours might look something like a little bit of an upslope, and then all of a sudden it jumps up just a bit more. So you're jumping ahead in army supply. I wish I had a better way to demonstrate this. I almost should have made a handy dandy graphic for this. Maybe I will, but you guys get that idea, right? So if your opponent, okay, this is gonna be tricky. I have to do this like backwards, but if your opponent's going up like this, nice general slope, you're doing a timing attack, you wanna be kind of sloping up at a greater rate. And so when they're, okay, so their army graph is like here. You want to be like higher than them and attack at that point in time because you're stronger. Right? Pretty easy. So that's what a timing attack is at its core value, and that's conceptually makes sense, right? We should be stronger. We're sacrificing something to be able to do that because all things considered, we should have pretty close to the same amount of resource collection. So we should be just spending that on different things. If we both have 5K minerals and 2K gas spent in different ways, whoever spends that better is going to win, right? Pretty easy. So that's at a fundamental face value what a timing attack is. So if you guys can maybe think about that, and the whole point of this video is really to help make conscious decisions when you're in the point in the game where you're like, I don't know what to do right now. Okay, I'm on 2 bases, maybe on 3 bases. I'm getting at, I'm at like 100 supply. What do I do? Do I attack? Do I defend? Do I take another base? What do I do? And if you can use this concept I'm talking about and think about the nice gentle sloping of army graphs and what you're doing right at this point. So if you're going along the game, okay, I'm taking a base, I'm expanding, getting some units, okay, and you're here and you're like, what should I do? Should I attack? Should I defend? If you want to attack, you probably want to make your graph go like this a little bit more of an upslope, and then attack, so you'll be stronger. Pretty simple. You should use your scouting information. You should use just that general conceptual value and think about, okay, if I attack and lose that attack, I'm going to be really far behind. So we do not want that to happen. We want to trade fairly. We want to trade resources, army value evenly with our opponent. So in that fight, our graphs are both going down at the same rate. That's your goal. You don't want to tank your graph and have your opponent keep doing their nice little steady climb, right? That's the worst thing that could happen. Then you're just fighting an uphill battle the whole game. So conceptually, I like to kind of think of it, okay, I picture that army graph in my head. What can I do to get an advantage for this attack, if that's the choice you want to make? So things like waiting until you have upgrades, going with like +1/+1, attacking with +2. Great. Those are great additional things that bolster your attack, right? Tech. And that's a whole different graph. Like I could go all over with those graphs, right? That's a different thing to talk about. Like You look at, click it, Chief. If we look at upgrade spending, there's also another graph for that. You know what I mean? So you can think about these things all in contextual. That's a fun word. I think I mispronounced that, actually. You can think about these graphs and use them to make your decisions. Pretty general way to think about StarCraft, right? We all have the same relatively close resource collection. Because we're watching our opponent, we're pretty evenly matched because we're in the same league. Hopefully we're pretty close if Blizzard's doing their job in skill to the opponent that we're fighting. In most cases, we're scouting them so that we know, okay, they have 2 bases also. I have 2 bases. We should be pretty close. So I need to make sure that my army value exceeds theirs, because that's really what you're thinking about. You're not as much thinking about unit counters as much as raw army value, making sure that you have the advantage. So really, guys, that's all I wanted to talk about. And that kind of got a little bit rambly, didn't it? About 11 minutes and 30 seconds. Not too bad. Not too bad. I hope that makes sense. I tried to describe it as eloquently as possible while it's still making sense. But that's really something that helped me in just changing my train of thought just that much. And thinking, because that was... I knew builds, like when I was... a newer player, like, you know, you get to that intermediate stage and you kind of know what to do for the most part. You know builds, you know strategies, but you don't know exactly how to execute certain things. So you don't know, that's the biggest question. Should I attack? What do I do? You know what I mean? That enters my head so many times in games. It used to. Now, if you just think about the concept of army value, okay, well, I know I should attack right now. I know I shouldn't attack right now. You can think about those things, and that'll just add to your overall skill level and your decision making, and you can make intelligent decisions within StarCraft. Not talking as much about the meta, not talking as much about build orders or builds specifically, or, you know, key units, but just thinking about army value at its core to make those decisions. So hopefully this helps some of you guys out. I think that it will. If you kind of just think about what I've talked about so far. I am going to make, I don't know what video we should make next. I'm thinking something like more race specific. So something like saying those Protoss videos, how to open up against Zerg or something like that. Maybe going through a little bit of a strategy kind of talk instead of these conceptual random thoughts. But I like that stuff. If you guys like the conceptual stuff, if you don't like it, let me know. Any comments you have. I did it right this time. Do you guys see that? Drop them below. Drop them below. Let me know. I will review all of your lovely little comments one by one and take very much pride in knowing that I am reaching out and touching some of you guys in not naughty places, in appropriate places. I'm touching you. It got a little weird. On that note, guys, thanks a lot for watching. I will see you next time. Have a great day, guys. Bye now.